Welcome to the Irish in the UK. This week we're going to be telling you a story about Elizabeth Rylands. Elizabeth first contacted me back in 2014 when she was trying to find her birth parents. Elizabeth was left on a doorstep in Manchester when she was only 5 days old. She was then taken into foster care and given the name Elizabeth Rylands. Later, when she was adopted, she was called Karen. I first began by asking Elizabeth, why does 61 Grafton Street in Manchester mean so much to her?
That was the AOB club on Grafton Street where I was left as a baby. I was abandoned in a cardboard box on the steps there of 61 Grafton Street on a cold winter's night in March. That was the 28th of March, and I was found at 11 o'clock at night. So that's my identity, really.
Now, we know that the search featured in the Manchester Evening News a little bit around about that time.
Yeah, that's correct. There was just a few lines in the Manchester Evening News saying that the detectives were scouring the streets of Manchester looking for a birth mother, a desperate birth mother, desperate because she had clearly cared for me, or someone had cared for me for 4 or 5 days previous to leaving me, and in the cardboard box I was actually wrapped in oilskin, so that's an indication that, you know, it was left to be, you know, warm and well looked after, really.
So then you were taken into care and eventually fostered.
That's right. Yeah, I was taken straight away to the Princess Christian Children's Home in Fallowfield. I lived there from March, the end of March, until August 1958, when I was fostered and later adopted by the same people, my adopted parents.
And of course, what age did you realise, or were you told that you were abandoned and that you were fostered and adopted? When did you actually find out about all this?
Yeah. Well, I've always known that I was adopted because my mum told me from a very early age, I think it was about 6 or 7, that I was special. She said, oh, you're special because we adopted you when you were 6 weeks old, and when you first saw your dad, you were sick all over him because they'd given you corned beef to eat. And at that time, I can remember the conversation that was in the kitchen. I know I said something about, well, what's happened to my parents, something like that, not that language, I guess. And my mum said, oh, they died in a plane crash. And then adoption wasn't mentioned again for years and years and years, until, as a teenager, we had an argument, and my mum said, and it was only a normal teenage argument, and my mum said, well, if you don't like it here, you know what you can do. And she went up the step, she stood on a chair, and she went into this tall cupboard, and she pulled out blankets and all sorts and produced a green tin, and out of that there was a birth certificate, a very short birth certificate, and she just went like this and said, look, this is who you are. And I just spotted the name Elizabeth Rylands. And then she put it back as quickly. I mean, it disappeared as quickly as it arrived. And then again, years and years went on, really.
What would it mean to you if you were to meet your mum?
Oh, it would be unbelievable. I mean, it's something that I can't even allow myself to think about, if I'm honest, because it would just be so amazing for that to happen, given the length of time, you know, passage of time. But yeah, that would just be great. And there's also, you know, a birth father out there somewhere, or just to meet siblings, or even to get information as well, just some information about my circumstance.
So why do you think you're Irish, or why do you think you've got an Irish connection, or where have you got the idea of Ireland from?
Well, the funny thing was, a lot of people have said to me, oh, you know, you're left on Grafton Street, you know, you're definitely Irish. And I was found in an area, Grafton Street was known as Little Ireland. So that was the first thing. I thought, Then I had a DNA test done about 7, 8 years ago, something like that, and it said there's a likelihood of some Irish. But again, I didn't think an awful lot of it, because everyone said to me, oh, everyone's got Irish in them somewhere. So I sort of didn't think much of it. But 3 or 4 weeks ago, I did a second DNA. I got the results back, and it said I was 86% Irish.
Lauren, how do you feel about all this?
I can't imagine what it's like, really, because I'm helping my mum with a bit of research, And we've always known about her circumstances since not that long after my mum found out, I think, about being abandoned. But it's really hard to put the short clippings in the newspapers and the information we have together with Mum, because it just seems like such a different era and another world really to how things are now. Everything was very closed off, whereas now we're all quite open about it, and it's very hard to get that straight in my head really, that this actually happened to my mum. But it's something I know that it's always bothered her, and I really want her to be able to, if not find her birth family, at least find some information that makes it feel a little bit more, this is where I came from, which is why we've been researching the area and things like that.
Yeah. And it seems so difficult. I've come across a number of cases like this where it's so difficult for people to actually find out about their heritage.
Definitely. I mean, we had almost nothing to start with other than RAOB Club on Grafton Street. That's all we had. We've put a few pieces together. We've learned a bit more about the area at the time she was found. The RAOB Club at that time was surrounded by hotels and bed and breakfasts where a lot of people would often, not just Irish people, but quite often people would come over and stay there. So that's helped put a bit of context into things of what might have happened. Did somebody come over to have a baby here and have to go back again? So we've been able to put context into it, but any more information would just be amazing.
Yeah. Elizabeth, somebody watching this programme tonight, what would you like to say to them if you thought maybe it was you were their baby?
I'd like to say, please come forward. Just to, we're not after necessarily a relationship after all this time. Obviously, that would be great. But please come forward. I just hope you've had a good life and your family, and that you've not felt guilty about what you did, because I think, at the time, I think that was a really, really brave thing to do.
And that was the 22nd of March 1958.
Yeah, I think it's from that week. I was found on the 28th of March, and we just don't know when my birthday is. So I think for that week, from the 22nd through to then, we could say, if you had a baby that you've had never had any contact with, and your baby's been placed for adoption, and you've always would, it may not be, it could be me, really.
Today I'm travelling to meet Elizabeth, 5 years after we first met. Since then, Elizabeth has tried absolutely everything to try and find her birth parents. She's also appeared on our radio show, and we've got the Irish newspapers involved. I'm really looking forward to meeting her again. So, Elizabeth, moving it on, where did you go from here?
Oh, it's a long time ago now. I think it was way back in 2014, early 2015, and I was in contact with lots of different radio stations in Ireland and in the UK. Did lots of interviews, some of them quite long and detailed, but unfortunately I didn't get any information from those interviews. Nobody phoned in, nobody knew anything. And then after that, I was lucky enough to be on Good Morning Britain. Of course, that went national then, and my daughter was on the programme with me. We put our story out there, because that's what you have to do in my situation. You've got to tell the world everything. But again, we didn't get very far. I'd almost put everything on hold, really. I think, well, yeah, definitely I thought that I'd done everything that I could. I was just really trying to come to terms with never finding out where I come from, really. And then I'm in a support group for foundlings, an online support group, and the person who set the support group up, she was invited to go onto a long lost families programme because she's a foundling, and as part of her invitation, other foundlings were invited down to the Foundlings Museum in London through the Coram Foundling Museum. So I went down there to support my friend, and through doing that, the TV company, the wall-to-wall TV company, they had my details, and it was like many years after that, about 3 years later, 2018, and I was contacted to see whether I'd like to have a discussion about doing a programme looking at DNA and how DNA can help to find your birth relatives.
And of course you went through some very tough times, because I know that you've tried absolutely every angle, and then you came more or less against a brick wall.
That's right. That's right. I mean, it wasn't an easy journey to do that. I had to keep picking myself up and getting emotional strength to start again. But, you know, look where we are, really. Look where we are now. So it was all worth it.
DNA, that was your first link, or your first step, if you like, to getting where you are today.
Yeah, I mean, DNA, because initially it's through the DNA that I found out I was Irish, which is how, you know, you guys come to be involved initially back in 2014, because the fact that I knew I was Irish, it was just amazing, really. I mean, obviously it told me that they'd been able to find my birth dad, but sadly he died when he was 42. But, you know, I learned that he was from Dublin, and when he was about to be 17, he moved over to Manchester. But, you know, as part of finding that out, I also found out that from being an only child, I'd gone to having 10 paternal siblings. So it's just like, oh God, it's just unbelievable, really. It's amazing.
We're going to take a little break there, and we'll be back with Elizabeth's story in a few minutes. Welcome back. This week we've been telling you about Elizabeth Rylands, who has been searching for her birth parents for a very long time. We're going to continue on with her story now, and I asked her what did it feel like when the DNA test revealed that she has a birth family.
It was just fantastic. It was just, well, it was surreal at first. It was really odd, because when we met in London, and we just met, it was just like looking at people who looked like you. And that was weird for me, because other than my two daughters, I'd never experienced that before. And we were all sitting around, and we could all, and they likewise, they connected with me over that physical likeness, because they'd obviously by then seen my photo, and they could see me and their family. And it just wasn't like being with a stranger. It was like being with someone you already knew, and of course you don't know each other, but that's what it felt like.
And of course this story originally started in Manchester, and then it kind of ended in Manchester, if you want to say, because then you found out that your sister actually lived in Manchester, and you went off to meet her.
Yeah, I mean, that was perfect in the way, being like, you know, a full Mancunian. Yeah, so then having met family on my birth dad's side, I then went off to meet my sister Kim.
Kim, when did you find out you had a sister?
In August. I got a letter, and it was from Long Lost Family. So I immediately rang them, and they said they had discovered they had somebody who was interested in maybe talking to me and my family, and would I be willing to give her DNA. So the next day, a lady came down from London, and she took my DNA, swab my mouth, and off she went. Back to London. So 5 days later they rang me and said the results had come back with a 98% match, and they broke the news then that I had a half-sister, and I went on to meet Karen. As soon as she walked in the door, my arms just went out to her, and then we sat down, and we just sat there on the chairs, and I had an album of photographs of my mum and some of the family, and I was showing Karen, and we were talking about things, and I was telling who the people were, and it was lovely. And I really felt some kind of a bond. Karen's had she's had a lot to find things about her father's side, who's got a very large family, the father's side. So she's been getting to know them. We've not rushed into things, we're taking things slowly. You know, we have spoke on the phone, but nothing too deep, and because, like I say, Karen's just been trying to assimilate it. Because she's gone all these years wondering and waiting and watching. And I think a cloud's lifted off her.
Now, of course, you lived with your mum. Tell me a little bit about your mum and Karen's mum, what she was like.
My mum was a single parent with 2 children. She always worked. She worked in nightclubs. She was a cocktail barmaid. And she was a lovely lady. She was an absolute fantastic mother. Being a single mother and the circumstances, because we never had any money.
And she never indicated or mentioned anything about the baby left on Grafton Street or nothing like that?
Nothing. Not one word. None of the other family would have known. I don't think she would have confided in anybody, even her mother.
But the baby was very well looked after for the 5 days that it was probably with its mum, and also when it was left on the doorstep for the local bobby to find probably. It was very well wrapped up and in warm clothing.
She was beautiful dressed, and she was wrapped in an oilskin against the weather, against the elements. And also, we think she was left there because at the time you always had a bobby on the beat, and you could set your clock by him. And she would have known that beat bobby was due at whatever, 11 o'clock at night, I think Karen was found. And she would have known that he was due there.
So Elizabeth, now that you've got a sister Kim, what's your relationship like?
It's really natural, and we have a fair amount of contact with each other, particularly over Messenger, and just keep in touch really, and a couple of phone calls here and there if something happens. And I've seen her in person once since we first met. My daughter's been up and husband have visited Kim, and we'll be seeing her next month actually. We're going up to Manchester, so it's quite natural now. It's like falling into a routine, which is quite nice. Kim's so generous in sharing information, about the family and just about her life, and she's a real generous soul really, and she's got lots of photographs that she's shared with me.
And of course your mum was a really good looking lady.
She was, yeah. She was stunning. Very high cheekbones, and I think she worked very hard as well. She didn't have it easy.
Now I know you've tried so hard to find your mum and your dad and whatever family that might be. How disappointing was it for you when you actually found out that your beautiful mum had passed away?
In all honesty, I'm going to make myself out now to sound really harsh, but my adopted mum had only just died when I found out all this information, and the grandparents and the other grandparents in the family have all died within the last 4 years. And I found out my birth dad had died many, many years ago, when he was 42, 43, in the 70s, so I would have been about 14 when he died. And then to find out that my birth mum had died, in a way, for me, it sort of made sense, because it was a generation that had passed on, and obviously she didn't want anyone to know about me, because she managed to keep it very, very well hidden. So I don't think she would have been particularly pleased to know that this is what's come out of it. So in many ways I think this is good timing, because what it's allowed for is the next generation, my generation, to go on and have their own relationships based on the strength of that relationship and not based on history. I mean, obviously I'm not going to get answers as to why I was left, but of course we've got scenarios that we can make a good we have a rough idea. And I don't really know when my date of birth is, which before I found my family was a massive thing for me, but now I found my family, does it really matter whether it's the 24th, 23rd or 25th of March? And it's interesting because no, it doesn't really, not now, because I've actually got people in my life which I didn't have before. So not wanting to come across as really, really hard, because obviously it would have been lovely to meet her, but I'm not under any pretense that it would have all turned out smelling of roses.
After all those years of searching for your family and, meeting them all now, looking back on it all, it must have been a very happy time for you.
It's very happy. It's a very happy time. Initially, it was like being an automatic pilot. It's like, your wedding day, you're enjoying it, but you're going through the motions. You're not really aware that you're in it. Yeah. It's very much like that, because it's 10 months on now. So it's still very new, but it's absolutely fantastic, you know, and we're building really strong relationships and, you know, it's very good. Very lucky.
Now, you were very determined all those years, and no matter what happened, you never stopped looking and you kept going all the time. What would you say to our viewers or somebody watching tonight that's trying to locate their family or maybe their loved ones? What would you like to say to them?
I think you keep going. You be clear on why you're doing it and what you want out of it. Because last time we spoke, I think we were talking about so important for me to know when my birthday is, to get some medical information and those sort of things. I wasn't actually going into this for relationships, and that was genuine at the time, which is what I've got. So I think it's been very, very clear on your own expectations of what you want from it. Keep going. The DNA's invaluable to do the DNA, but don't go in thinking just everything's going to be perfect, because people come with their own histories, as I've got my own history. And I've been very lucky, because that's just fantastic to be able to have your DNA tested now. And, you know, because it started off with me finding out just that I was Irish, whereas before that I didn't have anything.
Lauren and Sarah, your daughter, they must be really delighted for you, and of course for themselves, because they've got an extended family.
They have, and they've supported me through all of this journey. I mean, they've always known my story, and for them being part of it, like Lauren's met you before, Martin, and she's been on, you know, your programme, and Sarah's been on, you know, national TV, and she was up there last year supporting me through this, and just meeting the people and the family. For them, it's you know, it's fantastic, really.
You've come across a lot of people in your lifetime, of course, trying to help you out with this story, and I'm sure you'd like to say a few thank yous.
I would indeed, and it's like when you say, oh, so many people to thank, you know, you don't want to miss anyone else, but obviously I'd like to thank you and Annette and everything you've done for me, and it's like really poignant, you know, almost starting off with you and now finishing off, we've got the conclusion of the story. And, you know, everyone on the national TV, on the radio stations, and people on my Facebook page as well. And, yeah, just everyone, really. It's been fantastic. And, of course, the DNA specialists and experts. Without their help, none of this would have happened.
Well, what a story. I'm so delighted for Elizabeth that after all those years of trying, she has found her family. I'd like to thank Kim, her sister, for all her cooperation and contribution to the story. Now, we've all heard how important DNA is, so for people watching tonight that's trying to find their birth family, don't give up hope. Our story has had a happy ending. We hope you've enjoyed it at home. Don't forget, Henry McGlade is back next Thursday evening at 7 o'clock with his show, and we are here with the Irish in the UK at 7:30. Until then, take care and thank you for watching.